Last year, there were nearly 22,000 murders in the U.S. Not surprisingly, more than 200 true crime podcasts launch every year in the U.S. alone. There's no shortage of crimes and no shortage of crime podcasts to cover them, but none of those shows have the heart of our true crime podcast.
Thank goodness.
Well, hell, they didn't even have seatbelt laws back then.
He never wore a seatbelt. Yeah, it's fine. He could not remember exactly what happened and thought that he had blacked out. That was about it. That's all he could tell officers.
No. He was drawing things saying the thoughts won't stop.
I want to see how this plays out.
It's heartbreaking.
Isn't it time you made our true crime podcast your true crime podcast? Our True Crime Podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting apps.
Hey listeners, this is Mike Morford here, and I want to invite you to stay tuned during this episode for a special preview of a brand new podcast from this network that I think you're going to like.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective,
and Campus Killings.
all of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances, and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones, in some cases even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing.
Episode 59, Debra Sue Daniel. This week's episode is a Missing Persons Alert episode. We were contacted by the family of 68-year-old Debra Sue Daniel, who has been missing for about a month. They asked us to prioritize coverage of Debra's case, as her disappearance is very recent, and the investigation into her whereabouts is ongoing. Ann Puckett, Debra's niece, is our guest today. There's not a lot of information out there about this case, but we will relay the information that we can in hopes that someone has seen Debra. In August 2022, Debra was living at the Holland Towers Apartments on Market Street in Meadville in Crawford County, Pennsylvania. Debra faced some challenges in life. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She lived alone but was in very regular and constant contact with her family. In fact, her family tells us that Debra did not like to go more than a few hours without reaching out. She preferred to be talking to people than to be alone. She was normally in contact with family members at least 4 to 5 times a day. August 13th was the last time her family spoke to Debra on the phone. She was out and about on the 14th, though, and seemed to be acting normal. On August 15th, Debra set out to visit her elderly mother, Dot, at a nursing home where Dot had been staying for the past 2 weeks, called Edinburgh Manor. Debra didn't own a car, but she was determined to visit her mother. Sometimes she would attempt to walk to the nursing home along Route 19 from Meadville to Edinburgh. This was typical for her to walk, but to be clear, it wasn't possible for Debra to walk the whole way. It is about 18 miles between the two towns. Her family says that sometimes Debra would grab a ride from someone in her apartment complex. Other times, she would hitch rides with passing cars or accept a ride from area residents who lived along the route. Unfortunately, on the 15th, no one knows how Debra actually traveled. Debra's family members, including her niece Anne, none of whom live in the area, became extremely concerned when they learned that she had not been in contact with anyone since August 15th. Jill, Debra's sister, had actually been in Meadville from Ohio visiting Dot in the care facility that week. While Jill was in town, a friend of Debra's from the West Coast texted her and said she was concerned because she wasn't able to get Debra on the phone, and she hadn't talked to her since the 12th. Jill finally called the Pennsylvania State Police about Debra's absence, but by then she had returned to Ohio, and the state police said someone needed to file a report in person. All Debra's family, other than her ailing mother, was in Ohio. Anne and Jill traveled to Meadville and reported Debra missing to the police there on August 24th. They, along with the police, went to Debra's apartment and performed a welfare check, but Debra wasn't there. However, they located her book bag, which the family says she used as a purse, in the apartment. But Debra's phone, wallet, and keys were all missing. It appeared she stepped out to run a short errand or to meet someone. Police left a calling card in the apartment for Debra to contact them if she returned, but to date, she has not done so. Anne and Jill figured out that the last time Debra went to the healthcare facility was on the 15th, so they traveled the route Debra would have taken to Edinburgh Manor, along Route 19. Along the way, they kept their eyes peeled for any signs of disruption to the roadway or fringes that could look like someone had had an accident or a hit and run, but they saw nothing. They also stopped in Sagertown, a village along the route, to ask if anyone had seen Debra at the local businesses there. No one had. Police and family talked to staff at the Edinburgh Manor nursing home. They learned that Debra had indeed made it to the facility on the 15th. Staff there saw her that day around lunchtime. Interestingly, they said she was definitely carrying the book bag. This means that after she left the nursing home, Debra returned to her apartment where the book bag was found and then left again, either alone or with someone else, taking her wallet, keys, and phone with her. Debra's phone has stopped working. The family believes that it is turned off or has a dead battery. Police have told the family they are working to obtain Debra's cell phone records. They're also taking a look at surveillance footage from her apartment building, which has cameras outside. Police have verified that there has been no activity in Debra's bank account since 4 days before she was last seen. Because her disappearance is so recent, police are still in the process of investigating. No formal searches have been conducted for Debra, though, because it's not known exactly where she was last seen. In the meantime, her family remains very concerned. But Debra's is not the only very recent disappearance in the area. 35-year-old Candice Caffas left her parents' home in the 9100 block of Mount Pleasant Road in Union Township on July 16, 2022. This is only about 4 miles from Meadville, where Debra lived. According to the Meadville Tribune, police said Candice left the home between 10 p.m. on July 15th and 3 a.m. on July 16th by climbing out of a bathroom window. Her mom reported her missing at 3:10 a.m. Like Debra, Candice faced some challenges. Her mother, Carol Caffas, told GoErie.com that her daughter had been diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that results in a number of physical, mental, and behavioral problems. As a result, Candice has the mental capacity of a child. Carol is concerned because, as she said of her daughter, quote, "She knows where she lives, but she doesn't know how to get home from somewhere myself or her dad have ever been to with her." She said, "The sightings she's been seen at, we've never been there with her." One of the symptoms of this disorder is near constant hunger, so Carol believes that Candice would have sought out food. Candice's behavior had slightly changed of late, too. Carol says her daughter had not run away since her teen years, but Go Erie reports, quote, "Carol Caffas said her daughter ran away on July 12th, just days before her current disappearance. Candice escaped through her bedroom window and was gone for about 2 hours," her mother said. "We found her swimming in French Creek." For obvious reasons, there are concerns that Candice could be disoriented and lost, or could have been taken advantage of by someone with nefarious intentions. Unlike in Debra's case, large-scale searches have been conducted by the Pennsylvania State Police for Candice. Trooper Cindy Schick, public information officer at the Meadville Barracks of the PSP, confirmed that some searches had taken place. She said, quote, "Some of the guys were out there last week with drones and searched a general area by the Geneva Swamp." Apparently, there was a last known sighting of Candice that informed the police searches. Trooper Schick confirmed that Candice was last seen on July 16th on Route 285 at Connaught Lake, about 8 miles from her home. Debra Daniel is described by police as white, 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighing 120 pounds, with green eyes and dirty blonde hair. Candice Caffas is 4 foot 9 inches tall and about 95 pounds, with dirty blonde hair and green eyes, and she was last known to be wearing a purple t-shirt, orange shorts with a white floral pattern, purple and blue sneakers, and glasses. If you have any information about either case, please contact the Pennsylvania State Police. Mike Morford sat down with Ann Plunkett to talk about her aunt's case. That conversation is coming up.
Hey listeners, this is Mike Morford, co-host of Missing Persons, and I want to tell you about a brand new podcast my co-host Chess Betancourt and I are collaborating on with our friends, Doctors Megan Sachs and Amy Schlossberg, who currently host Women in Crime. It's called Campus Killings, and it's out right now. As criminologists, Megan and Amy teach, research, write, and podcast about victims, offenders, and the issues surrounding our criminal justice system, and each have over 20 years of experience working in the system in various capacities, such as law enforcement, mental health, and offender reentry. In each episode of Campus Killings, Megan and Amy dive into some of the most shocking and tragic murders to happen on school grounds and provide their analysis as both educators and trained criminologists. They discuss what went wrong and what could have been done differently to prevent the tragic outcome. I'd like to play you a short preview of Episode 1 of Campus Killings, covering the murder of Jean Cleary, and after you listen, go over and subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app to hear the full episode. Episode 1 is out right now, as is a bonus episode covering Amy Bishop, a college professor who resorted to violence after not getting tenure at her university. If you like any of the true crime podcasts from AbJack Entertainment, I think Campus Killings will be right up your alley, so be sure to check it out. Thanks for listening, and enjoy this preview.
She was strangled with a metal slinky that her roommate identified as coming from their own dorm room, and this was according to the original autopsy. Keep that in mind. The county coroner later testified at the preliminary hearing that he compared the coiled wire slinky found under Jean's bed with the marks found on her throat, and they were a match. He would later come to change his opinion. But for now, he's saying the slinky was the object that caused her death. The official cause of death was manual strangulation with abrasions, bruises, and marks from the glass and the slinky visible on Jean's throat. Following this horrific murder, the dorms were unlocked during the day, but were supposed to be locked for the night at 10 p.m. or midnight, depending on who you ask. Stoughton had no guard, though, or security checkpoint. You know how we have those guards and security checkpoints on our campus? Well, unfortunately, none of those existed.
I don't think they're very useful anyway, but
they could or could not be useful, but they're another measure, a layer of security.
Sometimes they're deterrents, if nothing else.
Sometimes they're a deterrent, exactly. Jean's death brought attention to the fact that dorms were supposed to be locked at night, but the students were known to prop the doors open for easy access. I mean, using pizza boxes and so on. I remember this kind of thing happening in my dorm as well. Immediately after her murder, Lehigh doubled security patrols and started enforcing the dorm locking rules, though. They visited all the dorms and reminded students to lock their doors. The campus police chief ordered more regular patrols of the dorms by his officers. The school sent a letter to parents and students encouraging them to look out for one another, walk in pairs, and stick to well-lit areas. The students and tennis team members expressed shock that this had happened at Lehigh. This was the first murder at Lehigh, which had been in existence since 1865.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think everyone was really surprised by this. The students were scared, and the impact on their lives was permanent. A year after the crime, it was reported that women on campus were much more aware of the dangers of walking alone and not locking their doors. The dorm doors were never really propped open anymore, except by seemingly clueless freshmen who were soon lectured about the murder. So it was just the incoming people. Everyone really, smartened up and locked down. But what about the perpetrator?
Hi, Annie, and welcome to Missing Persons. I want to thank you for coming on to discuss your Aunt Debra's case with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this.
No, it's our pleasure, and we're going to help you get the word out. Your aunt's been missing, just under a month? So this is a very recent case. How tough has this last month been for you and your family?
It's been really difficult. I would say if we didn't have our faith, it would be almost impossible to deal with. I think we really have come to the conclusion that she's been abducted, so our concern really is for her well-being. And with not having any answers, it's, of course, completely natural where our minds wander to, and it's just horrible to think about what she might be going through.
Yeah, there's no good outcomes with that. If she's been taken and harmed or if she's being held against her will, none of that sounds very good. So we'll definitely do our part to help get the word out so people know that she's missing and spread the word. Before we get into what happened to her and some of the details around that, can you tell us a little bit about Debra herself and what was going on in her life?
Yeah, absolutely. So Debra herself, she's a very unique individual. If I had an audio file, you'd be able to hear how unique she is with her laugh. But she's not married. She was single or is single. She has bipolar disorder, so she has some real highs and some real lows. So I think people, unless they either had experienced it or had it themselves, some people didn't really have the patience for her, but she did have some close friends. She loved her mother, which her mother is in a nursing home presently in Edinburgh, which is about 19 miles away from Meadville, which is where Debra is living. I keep saying was in past tense, so I'm not sure what tense to use. For at least prior to her going missing, that's where she was living. And without having a vehicle, she would do whatever she could to get there, including walk. At 68 years old, she would walk as far as she could, even in the rain, to get to her mom. So she was very, very devoted to seeing her mother. And just one of those people that I remember she said to me once, she was remarking about how kind I was being to her. And I think that she just misses out on that because of her bipolar disorder. But she was very sweet herself, and I'm so afraid for her. Yeah. I'm really afraid for her.
Is she a good-natured person that someone might take advantage of, possibly?
Absolutely. She's trusting, which is her problem. She grew up in a generation where it was perfectly fine to hitchhike. So we know that she had hitched a couple of rides down to Edinburgh to see her mom, and gotten some rides from strangers, because I've actually talked to those strangers because they reached out to me since she went missing. Yeah, she was very trusting, so she could have easily been taken advantage of that way. Oh, something else I wanted to share with you is that she loved animals, and she was a strong advocate for animals.
Okay. She gets around, she goes to visit her mom frequently. How often would she go to visit her?
Every day, if not at the very least every other. Her mom had only been in that nursing home for 2 weeks before Debbie disappeared. She was put in there after a nasty fall at her home. Her husband put her in that home. So as soon as Debra found out that's where she was there, regularly. Oh.
So she had gone there a number of times to see her mom, and without any kind of incidents mm-hmm. where something happened to her, or she came home fine, no issues.
Yes, that is correct.
And was she living alone at the time, or did she have a roommate? What was her living situation?
She was living alone. She has an apartment at a place called Holland Towers, which is a community assistance program housing. Yeah, I can't remember exactly the wording for it, but yes, she had an apartment there.
Okay, and is she working?
No, she gets Social Security or disability.
Okay. You talked a little bit about her bipolar disorder. Is that something that she took medication for, and was it well managed?
Yes, very well managed. I won't say that there weren't times as is the case with most people that have bipolar disorder, at some point she would stop taking the medicine, but the disappearance is not something that's ever happened before.
It's not like her to just disappear for stretches and then, pop up all of a sudden a few days later, or a week later, or anything like that?
Not at all. And actually, aside from the fact that she hasn't seen her mother, the other huge, huge flag for us is the lack of communication. She also didn't really have boundaries, so she would talk to people, the same person, 3, 4, or 5 times a day, either on the phone, over text, over email. She was constantly talking to people. She had to talk to somebody, and if you didn't respond right away, she was responding right away, like, why aren't you talking to me? What's going on? Did I make you mad? Why are you? So as of I believe the 14th is the last time that anybody spoke with her. Or the 13th was the last time someone talked to her on the phone. The 14th, people saw her in person. So, that's kind of where we are. And I have more of a developed timeline than that. I guess I don't know when you want to get into that part.
Yeah, let's get in that in a moment. I'll ask you this. Did Debra have any kind of social media? Was she active there? Or, you mentioned calling people. Did she have a phone that she texted people with regularly? Things like that?
Yes. So social media, she still has an active Facebook page, even though she hasn't been on it in a couple years. She had made several others over the years, and she had actually just recently gotten off of there after getting into an argument with someone on Facebook. So she had kind of cut off social media for herself, aside from Pinterest, which she was on regularly, all day long. And about around the 12th or 11th, I think was the last time she was on that.
Okay.
And then as far as the phone goes, yes, she has a cell phone that she would call and text people from. The detectives have, I don't know what the holdup is, but they've been waiting on phone records for the last week. They did determine that the cell phone last pinged on the 14th, but they were waiting on her phone records to see who she had been talking to and stuff. So
yeah, I guess they need to get warrants and things like that to get that stuff, and it takes time.
Yeah, they had the warrant. They submitted the warrant 2 weeks ago, and they were supposed to get the phone records last week. They also got a warrant for her apartment building for video footage because there were cameras right outside her apartment. And the apartment building was able to get them footage from the 13th. But the 14th and the 15th, when they asked for that with the warrant, they started having some kind of a problem, a malfunction. And I guess an outside company is trying to work on it, I suppose. But that's the crucial piece of evidence that we're waiting on right now to confirm that she made it home on the 15th.
Your teenager just raided the fridge and walked out the back door.
Hi, Mom. Going on.
He yelled something over his shoulder that you only half heard. This is the last time you've seen him. You try to remember those words to help the police find him, but you can't.
What if your daughter disappeared? Your mother? Your son? What if years have passed and you're no closer to finding them? When a person disappears, the story doesn't stop there, especially for families. Each week, Missing brings you stories of missing persons and justice sourced from the case file of the nonprofit Private Investigations for the Missing. Together, we help raise awareness, elicit tips, and put pressure on police to keep searching.
Listeners say Missing is the most binge-worthy podcast of all time.
Search Missing wherever you listen to podcasts.
Missing, where mysteries have a mission.
The 15th is sort of the day in question. Can you walk us through those last movements that you know about, Debra, and the clues around that time?
Absolutely. So we know, according to one of the nurses at Grandma's nursing home, that Debra was there that day. So she had made it there around a little bit before lunchtime. The nurse didn't remember what she was wearing, and there are no video cameras at the nursing home or outside the nursing home. She couldn't remember what she was wearing, but she knew she had her book bag with her, which her book bag was her purse. And the nurse was adamant she had her book bag with her. She left around lunchtime that day, maybe a little bit after, and the reason that we strongly believe she made it home was that when we went on the 24th with the police to do the wellness check, because we live out of state from where she is, when we went with them, her book bag was there in her apartment on her kitchen counter. So we believe strongly she made it home. Now, I will say that her phone and her wallet and keys are not in the book bag. We knew that she didn't take it everywhere. Like if she was running out to get cigarettes, which was within walking distance, she might not take the book bag with her. But we knew that she had it with her that day. So that's why we do believe she made it home. So the video footage would confirm if she made it into her apartment, if she left her apartment, and then there's cameras outside the building all around would show which way she went, and they'd be able to follow that route. So to have this kind of a hang-up is just really anxiety-inducing.
Well, so we know if everything's correct, if that witness was correct and she did have her book bag, that she likely made it back in her apartment. But her phone, correct me if I'm not, her phone and her wallet she would use maybe to walk to go to the store, that's not been found. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So when and how did someone first notice that Debra was actually missing?
Okay, so this is going to be interesting. So she has a friend in California that she calls 4 and 5 times a day. Jill, who is Debra's sister, was in Pennsylvania from Ohio on the 16th visiting their mother. She was there like the 16th through the 18th, and she was really focused on her mom. And now, just to do a side thing, Jill is not really good at multitasking, so she needs to focus on one thing at a time. So while she was there in Pennsylvania that week, Debra's friend Tammy reached out to her via text, I think, to alert her that she had not heard from Debra and something was wrong and she needed to find out what was going on. Her friend Tammy is also a little bit emotionally unstable, so Jill took it in stride, and she had last heard from Debbie herself on the 12th. So because Jill was there visiting her mom, she didn't want anything interrupting that, and she didn't really take it seriously. And then also Tammy had left her voicemails that Jill didn't listen to until she got back home, and then she realized, oh, maybe this is serious. And that's normal, by the way, just so you know. Like, when we were there in Pennsylvania, I went with her. She didn't listen to some of her voicemails until she got home again. So she's kind of kicking herself for that because it really delayed things. So as soon as she realized this was a problem, she called the Pennsylvania police and learned that we couldn't file a missing persons report over the phone. She had them do a welfare check. They went to the apartment building. Of course, she wasn't there. So then it was a matter of getting a hotel room reserved, getting the funds together, and then heading down there. So we went down the following week.
This is from Ohio you're coming from? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so we went down the 24th, or up the 24th, sorry. And as soon as we got there, we went to the police station and filed the missing persons report, and then we went with the police over there to do the welfare check. That's when we saw her book bag there and kind of started really investigating in earnest from there on.
Did everything appear normal in her apartment? Was anything out of the ordinary? Was anything missing or disturbed or knocked over? Any sign of a struggle?
No, there were no signs of a struggle. Everything was very neat and tidy and in its place. I don't know if that was because she had cleaned up for a recent inspection when we had first been alerted to, like, realized, okay, she's actually, like, missing, this friend, Tammy, was convinced that when the police had gone to do a welfare check, because she had been calling them constantly, too, after we had called, she was told by somebody that the apartment was a mess, but when we got there, it was completely clean. So I can't really say what's going on with that.
And this is, I just want to sort of get an idea of this town. This isn't a big town. It's a population of, 12,000 people?
Yes.
So it's not like a huge city where it could just, disappear into like New York City or something like that. This is a relatively small town. I'm curious. I know you mentioned that video surveillance being messed up and they're trying to fix that, but was there any attempt made, as far as you know, to find any other stores or ring cams on someone's door or anything like that might have had more footage?
I can't say what the police or the detectives have done. When we were there, we didn't have the knowledge until like our last day there that she had probably made it home on the 15th. So meaning me and Jill, after we left the police station, we drove up Route 19, which is the route she walked to Edinburgh or got rides on. We stopped in Sagertown, which is a town right on the way there. You can't walk, you have to walk through it. There's a video store that has a camera pointed towards the street. He was checking to see if they had footage from the 15th, and they did not have footage by the time we got down there. There is a woman who lives close to Edinburgh that on the 14th, Debra had stopped and kind of sat in the shade sort of close to this woman's porch because it was hot that day. And she asked the woman for water, and she has a Ring camera, so she was able to supply that to the detectives to prove, like, hey, she was here, and actually that woman gave her a ride home on the 14th. So there's some video footage in some places, but I don't know what the detectives have done in terms of, like, in the city.
Yeah, well, that's a good sign that maybe there are different sources of video that might help piece some things together. I wanted to find out, too, was there any kind of organized search done? Any kind of dogs or volunteers, anything like that?
No, because we had never been able to pin down an exact location. I had been in contact before we left here. I started plastering this all over Facebook, so I had been contacted by a man who owns a drone and has been actually assisting with the search for another woman that was missing. She went missing 30 days to the day before our Aunt Debra, and he had offered his assistance, but without an area to look in, I didn't really know what to tell him. The town itself is small. But at the time, we were thinking maybe she had been picked up by someone on 19. So, we were kind of searching ditches along the way ourselves, but we didn't really know where to tell him to look, and we still don't know.
Sure. I wonder if, the drone is definitely a good idea because you can see a lot from the sky. I wonder if maybe, there's someone with search dogs that might be able to just sort of follow a scent from your aunt's apartment and maybe just get an idea of where she may have gone. That might be something worth pursuing if you could find someone that has tracking dogs.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great idea. Actually, I think I can find someone.
Yeah.
You can know somebody because they've been doing that with Candice Caffas too.
Yeah, and that's a good segue. You mentioned Candice because she went missing almost 30 days to the day, or just about 30 days to the day before your aunt.
Yes.
And it's been suggested that maybe their cases are linked. She vanished July 16th, 2022. I'm curious, do you know if your aunt and Candice knew each other or had any kind of connections to each other?
So I don't know if they knew each other, neither does Jill. What I can say, because we have considered that, and everyone that we've talked to has wondered that out loud. The connections between the two of them, they're both women. They're both from Meadville, and they are both mentally vulnerable or mentally disabled. And then both of them, if their cases are related, it would have been a crime of opportunity. So those are the main things that link the two of them. But that's all we know.
Yeah, and again, a town of 12,000 to have two women go missing, 30 days apart. It's not not New York City where you're bound to have people vanishing. This is a lot smaller population, so to have two women, both as you mentioned, that have some parallels, it seems like something worth digging into, at least to see if there's any possibility that there's a connection.
Absolutely, and that's something that we do hope that the detectives are pursuing. We made them aware of our concern when we brought that up. They agreed that they had considered that themselves. We also contacted the Pennsylvania FBI while we were down there to make the report. The woman that took the report just simply said, I'm making the report, and it's going to be up to agents to follow up. So, again, we're kind of dead in the water. But every possibility, every possible thing to look at, we're sending their way. Like I said, I plastered it all over Facebook and on Pennsylvania Craigslist. So anything that I get, I send immediately to the detectives. So every possible connection that someone comes up with, I'm sending them their way.
So it definitely seems like something worth pursuing. Hopefully they're going to look into that angle, because again, just that small area for two women to go missing a month apart, it's just there could be something there. Just an idea about the area and the crime rate. Is this an area where there's a lot of crime? Is it a place where people go missing? It doesn't seem like it would be based on the population, but what do you know about that?
So I can't give you percentages because I've not looked at that myself, but what I can tell you is that, again, before we even left to go down there, as soon as I found out, started calling, her sister Jill had called hospitals, and I called the morgue. And when I asked them at the morgue, the guy that answered informed me that there were 3 women missing from there, now, including Debra, 3 women. That one woman had gone missing a month before Candice, and then Debra. But at the same time, when I have looked into this other supposed missing woman, and I did hear that from other people while we were down there, but I've never been able to find her name or information. And when I went into a General Dollar there to take in a flyer for them to put up about Debra, the 2 girls that worked there said, "Oh my gosh, that's number 3. And then when I asked them about the woman, they said, well, we don't really have any of her information because it didn't seem like anybody was really looking for her. So I don't know. And when I asked the detectives, they didn't really say anything either. So I don't know if there actually is a 3rd woman missing or not.
I wonder if maybe someone's getting confused and sort of thinking, they're miscalculating and thinking Candice will, how you hear stuff secondhand, and maybe they're getting Candice confused with being missing a month earlier than your aunt and thinking she's the person that was missing a month earlier. Sometimes confusion can cause different avenues that are sort of dead ends, unfortunately.
I won't say that's impossible, but the only reason I would disagree with that is because the mortician or the coroner and the women at the store said, there's that woman, then there's Candice, and now there's Debra. So they were very convinced that there was another woman in addition to these 2.
So that would, if it is indeed 3, over a 3-month span in this small town, that's even more worrisome and even more a sign that something could be going on there.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and I'll certainly do some digging and see what I can find about the possibility that there's a 3rd person, and see if we could find a name, do a little bit of social media attention, some kind of campaign so that people in Meadville share this podcast and share it on social media. So maybe someone out there will hear this and say, oh, I know who that person is. And they'll come forward with that information, and you can find out who that is. They can always contact the show, and I can pass it along to you. So, here we are a month later, no answers. You've mentioned you're sort of doing all this stuff, not living in the area. You sort of have to do this from outside the area. How difficult is that for you to try and keep up this campaign from a distance, sort of?
It is definitely difficult. Anytime we've had some kind of an update to the story or to the case, I've put it out on the same pages that I've been posting it on, which I think was about 20 to 30 pages on Facebook for Meadville, for missing persons, for Edinburgh, for Erie. Thankfully, there is a very awesome reporter at Erie News Now. He's been more communicative than the detectives have been. He's been reaching out to me regularly. He's interviewed me a couple times to get the word out there. He's still pursuing angles as best as he can for us. Like I think he's going to Holland Towers today because he's having trouble getting a hold of them. And so with his help, and then with other people on Facebook who have offered to post up flyers, we've been getting some help in that way. So it's been making it definitely easier. Otherwise, we're just still handling things from the social media aspect and just waiting.
It's got to be a difficult challenge to sit there, and sort of just hope answers coming. And, you're waiting on this cell phone data. You're waiting on that surveillance video to get fixed and hopefully reveal something. It's got to be tough to just sit there and not really be able to do anything and be waiting on some other clues here. It's
very tough. Her sister Jill is struggling not getting angry because of the lack of communication from people, and really she's starting to wonder if Holland Towers has something to do with it. And she's just, she's like, I don't know what's going on, and then, like I said, I think it's only natural that our minds wander to the worst case scenario. I mean, to just imagine the things that she might be going through is probably the worst part. And just thinking, she has no idea that we're looking for her. She has no idea that we're trying. And honestly, like I said earlier, if it wasn't for really just relying on God to get us through, it would be a lot worse. But it's definitely not easy.
Yeah. And I just want to back up for 1 second because you sort of mentioned that the Towers apartment place having something to do with it. I wanted to clarify, Candice didn't live there, did she?
No, she lived in the Lake Canoe area, which is actually, I think it's only 9 minutes away from where Debra lived. The only reason that Jill is feeling that way is because they're not communicating, and also because all of a sudden they started having problem when they were trying to get the 14th and 15th. And I guess also because that place, Holland Towers, they are community housing, so of course it's not going to be like the greatest place, but there's a lot of, I guess, frivolous evictions going on there, and there was even a report done in the Meadville Tribune about it. I guess the people there will even tell you that you don't even have to necessarily do something wrong. If they just don't like your look or they don't like something meaningless about you, they'll try to evict you. And a lot of people have been able to win over those evictions and keep from getting kicked out. But it's kind of an odd place. So that, plus the fact that some people there on staff didn't like Debra, plus the fact that now that we're not getting this video footage that's crucial, there's some suspicion there. And of course, with not having any answers, we're just suspicious of everything right now.
Yeah, you're just wondering what, if anything, could be a clue that jumps out to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm curious, how long had your aunt been living there, and did she have close friends or neighbors that she communicated with?
Yes, actually, She had been living there, oh my goodness, I don't even know how long. It was like a year, 6 months to a year, something like that. There was a woman that was there the day that we went to do the welfare check with the police that we've actually kept in contact with, that went outside with her for a cigarette pretty much every morning. And she would talk to her every morning. They would pray together and then kind of go about their days. And then there's some distant relatives of hers and Jill's that live in that building. And then there's a couple of other people that just, they know Debra, so that when we were there, they were saying, oh my gosh, I've wondered where she's been. It's been a week since I've seen her. And so she was very well known. And when she had her good moments, she was very, very loving, very kind, and people loved her. So a lot of people were aware that she was not there.
So no history of any run-ins or enemies there or anything like that?
Not to our knowledge, aside from staff. She had some run-ins with the staff. And actually, well, I don't know if it's really worth saying because it's been investigated, I guess. But so about in July, Debra had woken up in the middle of the night to a man in her apartment that had entered by a key. And when she asked him what he was doing there, he said he didn't know, and then he left. Well, come to find out that the apartment complex had given copies of every single person's key to 2 tenants, so that if someone got locked out of their apartment, they'd be able to get them in without having to call staff. And then after this has happened, they've actually taken those keys away. So I don't know if it's worth mentioning that on the program now, but that was a concern at the time. Well,
that's very disturbing. You know, the fact someone shows up in her apartment at some point in the middle of the night, that's, you know, hard to sort of ignore, because just because they took those keys back doesn't mean someone else didn't make copies of those keys and still had them.
Exactly. And I will say the thing about her building, which, again, just kind of barking up every single tree here, the thing about her building is there's cameras outside of her apartment door, like right there, because she's right off the elevator. It's a 7-story building. And there's cameras down in the lobby and at all the entrances, but there's no cameras on the elevator. And the elevator door opens up to the building, and on the other side, like behind you, there's another door that opens up to trash chute / kind of loading area. So that's something that we've asked them to look at. You know, go spray some luminol down there or see if there's any blood, anything. But I don't know if they've followed up on that lead.
Yeah, that's you see a lot of times there are cameras of some sort in an elevator because you know, coming in and or out of there is someone could come into contact with someone, so that could be an area of a blind spot. Of course, now the whole area seems like a blind spot since you don't have the footage, and hopefully they do get that fixed and they're able to review that footage. So I know you mentioned earlier you're doing social media, you're trying to get the word out. What kinds of things, what social media pages or websites are there that you can give out to people so they can go check out or share information from?
So I can say an email address that we've kind of established for this is helpusfindher. It's just all spelled out and it's all lowercase at yahoo.com. So helpusfindher. And then as far as Facebook pages, there's my personal page, but then there's also FYI Meadville, PA, and then there's Missing People of Pennsylvania.
So these are pages where people are actively talking about the case?
Yes, they've been regularly, like daily, commenting on the posts. I will say that the comments and the likes and the shares are getting fewer and fewer because I don't have anything new to update. I am trying to put out there, like, help us keep this going as often as I can.
Well, hopefully if there's anyone listening that's in that area of Pennsylvania especially, they will share this on social media and share the photos of your aunt and Candice, by the way, and maybe someone will come forward and identify that third missing person if there is one. Because if there really are 3 missing women over a 3-month period, then that's pretty hard to ignore. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know who that third person could be if there is one. But we'll definitely do our part to share on social media and get the word out there. I'm curious what your next plans are. What would you like to see done? Whether it's searches or different ideas to get attention for the case. Obviously you're limited because you're not right there. But if there weren't any limits, what would you like to be seen done going forward?
Well, I think obviously first and foremost is communication from the detectives would be wonderful, even if it's just to say, hey, it's today and we don't have anything new. Because every day that we don't hear something and we're left to try to follow up and then not get through or not get a call back, just it accentuates the urgency of the situation even more. So if we could just get that video footage, or if they're, I don't know what they're doing, but if they can start themselves, if they haven't already, looking at video footage from surrounding buildings to see if they can get her on there before it gets to be too far past that date to where they won't have that footage anymore. That would be essential, because if we can just narrow down exactly what day and exactly where she disappeared, that would help them know if we need to look outside of Pennsylvania, outside of the town, or, if they can find the car that took her or whatever it is. So really the key for us is that video footage, and it is so crucial, and just waiting is just so stressful.
Yeah. I can't imagine what your family's going through, just not knowing where your aunt is. Hopefully, again, people will share the story and share it on social media so people in that area continue to let people know, hey, we have missing people here. Let's spread the word. I am curious, as far as you know, have there been any confirmed or unconfirmed, any kind of sightings, I guess, of either your aunt or Candice?
No. I've actually spoken with Candice's mom. There's not been any confirmed or unconfirmed sightings of her since the 16th. That case itself is interesting. She just kind of vanished into thin air. I know that they do have some people using some search dogs. They've been doing that, but they really can't keep up with the scent. And as far as Debra goes, no, we've not had any reported sightings since the 15th. And I will say that one of the things they did get with their warrant was they were able to access her bank account, and it has not been used since August the 11th. So we know there's not any activity that way.
Yeah, and I guess she would have like credit cards or debit cards or something connected to her account. Well,
credit cards, she did have some, but the last that we had heard, which was maybe within a few months, that they were kind of all maxed out. So it's pretty much just her bank or debit card. Okay. Yeah. So no indication that she's been someplace purchasing something, or anyone else for that matter has been? No, not at all, which of course means if she was abducted, it wasn't for the money. Yeah. I'm curious, as we wrap up here, just for you to put your detective hat on, and I just want to say too, one thing that really bothers me is when you don't get a response from detectives working cases like this, because families are desperate for answers, and even if it's to say, hey, we don't have any new updates, right, but we're working on it, we haven't forgotten you, we'll give you updates as soon as we get them, some kind of response. It really angers me when I hear that police are not responding at all. So I hope they open up some kind of line of communication with you, but sort of asking you to put your detective's hat on, because you've been digging into this case and digging into Candice's case and sort of looking at everything. What do you think happened here? And do you think that your aunt's case really is connected to Candice's? Oh, that's a tough question. Well, I think that if there really are 3 missing women, or if another woman goes missing, from Meadville, particularly if that other missing woman or if another one that does go missing has some kind of mental or emotional instability, I would really start to question that connection harder. I will say that I definitely do believe that she was abducted. The whole family has kind of been on that. Her body is not showing up anywhere. It's not in the morgue, not in the hospital. There's not been any contact with her. There's not been any bank activity. So something has happened to her. Either she's being held against her will or somebody has murdered her and dumped her body somewhere that hasn't been found yet. So we definitely do believe that there is something nefarious going on with the situation.
It's just not a good possibility in either scenario.
Right, exactly.
Well, we'll definitely do our part to help spread the word about the case and get it out there to more people, and hopefully they'll share this, and hopefully you get some kind of tips or information that helps to lead to the truth about what happened to your aunt. And I appreciate you coming on to talk with us about her.
I really appreciate any and all help, tips, any and all everything. So this is just a huge help, and people like you and the reporter that are helping us get this word out there are just so essential to this whole thing.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get early access to ad-free episodes of the show and any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with charlieproject.org, the wonderful website that's been sharing information about so many missing persons cases for years. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. And we're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted and edited by Mike Morford, with research and writing by Jessica Betancourt. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.